The reason I deal with etymology is because the definition of a word will never predate the etymology of a word. Since that is true, the etymology gives us the first conception of the word, meaning etymology attempts to give us the first expression of the word when it was first conceived into society, the time, and the original meaning. So people ask all the time, man, look at all these craters on the earth. Look at meteors in the sky. But today I'm gonna give you a lot of knowledge. And it's the difference between a meteor and a meteorite. Now they'll tell you all of these differences, but we're not gonna pay attention to the mainstream differences because we know that the mainstream terms. I'm gonna look them up right now just so you can see. So a meteor is a small body of matter from outer space that enters the Earth's atmosphere, becoming incandescent as a result of friction and appearing as a streak of light. Now, what started this video was I said, what was the ancient expression of what we call meteors? There was no outer space in the ancient flat Earth cosmology. So I said, listen, I need to find the original conception of this word meteor to see when it came into history, to see the time frame. And I came across some startling revelations. So the word meteorite is a meteor that survives its passage through the Earth's atmosphere such that part of it strikes the ground. So we understand the differences that they give us, but what don't add up quite is when you do the etymology of these words, you'll see that the oldest one was meteor. And during the time it was conceived, and this was in the late 15th century, the word meteor was simply any atmospheric phenomenon. I repeat, the word meteor was any atmospheric phenomenon. In other words, what we call a UFO today could might as well have been a meteor back in the 15th century. From Middle French meteor and directly from medieval Latin meteororum, from Greek meteoria, the celestial phenomena, things in heaven above. It's very vague. It's not saying what we just read. Now today, if you look this up in a dictionary, it'll tell you a meteor is a ball, object that fell from space onto Earth. A meteorite. It'll tell you a meteor is this same object floating in space. But here you don't see the word space. I want y'all to pay attention to that. Here in the 15th century, we see the word heavens here in the etymology. The definition we read said meteor is an object that come from outer space. That's the definition you get today. But when you go back to the original conception here in etymology to the 15th century, there's no word space. It's a vague definition that has any atmospheric phenomena. Now, let's get deeper than this because now we're going to do the etymology of the word meteorite. The word meteorite is a rock that falls to earth out the streaking across the sky as a meteor. But look at the date, y'all. This thing came into our society in 1818. You ought to scratch your head and say, think about what I'm telling you. The word meteor came into existence in the late 15th century, and it meant any atmospheric phenomenon. Almost more than 2 centuries later, in 1818, the word meteorite came into existence. Y'all pay attention to the timeline. Think about what I'm telling you here. You mean to tell me when the word meteor came into existence in the late 15th century, didn't nobody have a concept of a meteorite? It took them over 2 centuries to realize that these meteors that were spoke of in the 15th century actually fall to earth. Think about it, y'all. It took over 2 centuries later for them to come up with the word meteorite. So the concept of a rock striking earth didn't even exist in the late 15th centuries. It was in an atmospheric phenomena. Over 2 centuries later, in 1818, they came up with the meteorite concept, saying that rocks can fall into earth, and this was the beginning of all your doomsday prophecies. How can I prove it? Let me show you something. Y'all think I be playing, man. I said, man, let me see who was the first person to discover a crater on earth. Ain't that a good question? Like, you never hear the ancestors talk about no impact craters. So I said, let me see who was the first person to discover a crater on earth. And I came across this man called Daniel Moreau Barringer. Now look when he was born, y'all. 1806. Y'all ain't tying this puzzle, the pieces together yet. So no one spoke of a meteorite until Daniel Moreau Barringer was born in 1806. In the 15th century right here, people was talking about meteors, but they was saying that they was any atmospheric phenomena. So it took over 2 centuries later for this man, Daniel Moreau Barringer, to be born, for them to come up with the word meteorite in 1818, y'all. Do you hear what I'm saying? They had to create this doomsday concept. And from the 15th century all the way up to the 1800s, when this dude here was born, then they came with this meteorite concept, saying that, okay, it's rocks falling onto heaven. But hold up, it goes even deeper. Brother Sanchez ain't coming to play with you today. It goes even deeper. Guess what? During the same time they was coming with this meteorite concept, guess what, y'all? That was during the heavy gold rush days. That was during the heavy mining days. Now y'all putting the puzzle pieces together. During the same time they came with these meteorite concept, a lot of mining was going on, y'all. A lot of rock quarries. A lot of these meteor sites. You see that the ground was replenished of resources. These are ancient quarries. I wouldn't say ancient because some of them, they mostly popped up in the 1800s around this time, the ones that they passing off as impact craters. Prove me wrong. Somebody come behind me and research this stuff with me. We already went over the fact that meteors never shoot up from the horizon or from the side. They always streak across the sky. So that support the late 15th century etymology of the word. It was any atmospheric phenomena such as a streak across the sky, a comet, meteor, all of that. And then when this dude, Daniel Moreau Barringer, came along in the 1800s, we see in our etymology, that's when the word meteorite popped up in our society. So the concept of an impact crater now came to be. So you got to think about that. You mean the ancestors never found none of these craters? Y'all really got to think about that. It took the earth civilizations all these years, all the way up until we got to the 1800s, to discover impact craters. The ancestors, nobody else talked about no impact craters or called none of these sites impact craters. We've been deceived, y'all. So the whole impact meteorite crater thing come about in the 1800s, and these wasn't no impact craters from objects from outer space. What they was rock quarries, mineral sites. I live right by a rock quarry, and if you see a picture of this thing from space, it'll look like a comet. So what if they take the sides of it and smooth it out and make it dome shaped, so you can say, well, look at the shape, Brother Sanchez, it's shaped like a comet. Well, a comet don't shape that perfect. Hello, a comet don't shape this perfect like what you see on the screen. A comet is an irregular shaped object. It's shaped all kind of crazy ways. If you ever saw a rock, man, I mean, it can shape like anything. Why these objects are always circular? Don't make no sense, do it. If all of these impact sites perfectly spherical, come on, guys. If I go outside in the backyard and get any rock off the ground that's big enough and throw it in some mud or something, it'll never always be spherical. It'll never just splat and hit spherical. So they they shaping these things out to be this way just to tell you that it's an impact crater, but it's all rock quarries. Some of these rock quarries are perfect spears, just like they pass off these craters. You can't tell the difference for real. And this can very well be linked to the trees that was cut down, the giant trees. But another proposition I want to make is a lot of the ancient wars that they fought was just the way we see them fought today. Something y'all don't pay attention to with war is that during war, they reshape the land. So if the United States come into your land and take it over, they take certain mining sites and certain dams and dam off certain water to certain enemies. It's all about the land and controlling the land. So a lot of these geological features, such as, little bitty canyons and little what they call an impact craters, can be ancient mining sites and ancient war sites. Think about it. War takes place over hundreds of years, and when your land is occupied by the enemy, what the enemy does in those years is shape the land, mine the land, and dig the ground. In other words, the enemy's objective may be to take control over your land to prevent his other enemy from resources. So if you in a strategic place of the earth where your civilization is by a big water source, such as a big river system, then back in the day, the enemy will take control over your land and they'll build a dam on that river because they know it's flowing to their enemy. So if they know it's an enemy too big for them to beat, what they'll do is take control of a strategic place and dam off that river, and that their enemy won't have water coming. So part of war was making dams. Part of war was digging canyons. Part of war was having mining sites. This is war, y'all. So I want y'all to rethink how we look at the earth. These mining sites, certain canyons that they telling us that the earth did, and all of this can be strategic warfare sites. Man-made stuff. For example, the Suez Canal was made definitely as a strategic war canal to control the economy and control certain trade routes. So they've been making canals and certain things on earth to control the land and control the people. So, like I said, every continent had a yearly flood. They actually stopped the yearly floods. So these people playing God by reshaping the geographics of the earth, which is also the bowels, the intestines, the organs of the earth. Look at the rivers as vein systems. Think of a vein being dammed up as a blood clot. I'm showing you timelines of how the word meteorite didn't exist to the 1800s. And to support my theory of how they control the water systems, the rivers, and dam them up to manipulate the flow of the water to different directions, you can see how that happened back in Angkor Wat. The ancients been controlling the flow of the water. When you look at Angkor Wat, they took water from a major river system and they dug a series of canals to make this water flow throughout the whole city of Angkor Wat, and it flooded yearly to water the crops for them. They didn't even have to water the crops. They had one of the best irrigation systems on the earth, and it wasn't even powered by electricity. It was all powered by nature and how the rivers flow and how the earth flood itself every year. But like I said, some continents don't get floods no more because of the dams and how they reshaping the geographics and everything. So this deep stuff that I'm giving you, the ancients clearly knew something about the river systems, and they built according in unison with nature as opposed to against it. So I got a video on Angkor Wat that you could go and check out on Bro Sanchez TV, and it'll give you the ancient cosmological concepts of how the city was built, being that it's built like the waters above and waters below, surrounded on all sides by water like the cosmos. So it's called Angkor Wat because this is how we get the ancient symbol called the Ankh. The word Ankh, A-N-G-K is the word Ankh that we use in Kemetic. So Angkor Wat is Angkor Wat. It's the Saints anchor. The whole city is built like the anchor of a ship. You know, this concept, man, when you think of how the ancestors looked at the way we live with the yearly flood, they looked at the earth as a celestial ship, so to speak, and that tied into their agriculture as well. They even built ships that they wouldn't use until the flood came. Certain areas weren't able to be accessed until the flood came. So these floods, the people depending on them, they even connected the cultures during the time where we didn't have highways and big pavement everywhere. The people couldn't access each other until certain times of the year. You had certain people over here, certain people over here. They couldn't access each other until certain times of the year when the flood happened. So they had boats that these boats would be able, when a flood happened, the water connected the people. So certain times of the year, people communicated at certain times when nature allowed these rivers, these floods to happen, where we can access certain areas just like they do today. When the river frees up in certain areas, the ice road truckers can come take their freight clean across the river. You know, because certain times of the year, the river frees up. Ancients been doing this with the earth. But like I said, they got us with the concrete, the highways, and all of that today. But the first highway system was the river systems of the earth. I didn't mean to get off subject like that, just to stay on these craters. You know, a lot of things that we see and what we don't see today is because of man manipulation. We don't see yearly floods of the Mississippi in America, even though a lot of the ancient people spoke of floods in America. A lot of the native people, a lot of Aztec, Mayan societies depend on yearly floods right here in the Americas that we don't depend on today because of damming. A lot of recreation, what they doing on the earth, y'all. This space war is really that. They're controlling your space, how you define geographical events and everything. So this is all part of the space program. You look at these impact craters and you look at these rock quarries and you say, hey man, you know, rock quarrying been around, and you can't tell these things apart. So you know, I'm willing to take criticism on my theory here, but like I said, I got strong facts to support it. The word meteorite didn't come about until this dude, Daniel Moreau, supposedly found, you know, one of the first craters in our time, even though none of the ancestors found craters or spoke of impact craters. You know, they did have ancient rock quarries, you know, but today they want us to reinterpret them as impact craters. And I think another thing that's odd about it is whenever they talk about craters being discovered, they always link these craters to valuable metals. In other words, what they say about these impact sites is that these impact sites have valuable metals. Come on, people, they giving you the definition of a rock quarry. This is when I smacked my head and said, wow, once again, we've been bamboozled. They've been telling us for years that these impact sites are heavy in metals. And they've been saying that these metals come from outer space, from meteorites. And I'm telling you that these are just fucking old rock quarries and mineral quarries. So it explains why they also have certain metals on these so-called impact sites. Wow. These sites contain valuable metals and they look like rock quarries. The first man to speak about it, finding an impact crater, was the dude Daniel Moreau, who I just showed you. And he came about talking about this during the same time we see the word meteorite pop into society with etymology. That's not a coincidence, y'all. They started naming these rock quarry sites meteor impact sites. The ancient called it fire from the sky. I can dig that, madon. Don't mean it ever hit Earth and caused the impact crater. And the way they say these things operate, coming in, seeding the earth with these mineral deposits, it really don't make no sense. Plenty of videos get into that aspect of it. I wanted to get into the actual timeline of the word meteorite itself to see when was this thing conceived. When was the concept of something falling to earth came into our society? And people like to blame this on the ancients to give it validity, but the ancients described it just like how we see it, streaks of fire going across the sky. The only time we see these things as a harm causing impact, making the creator look clumsy, is when you move on up into later time where they trying to control us with the doomsday prophecies. This was always an agenda for the NWO to create some kind of scare through nature. This is the foundation of all their budgets. If they can get you to think that this cosmology ain't perfect, then you got to pay them to keep shit going right and to steer comets out of the way so they don't hit your children. Because God clumsy, God ignorant, God stupid. So, we got to have these budgets. Because, God constantly striking his creation with clumps of rocks, even though we never saw this happen in our lifetime. No one has. Your grandmother, come on now. If there was so much of these things floating around in space, I'm pretty sure my great grandma would have seen one in her lifetime. What about her great great grandma? Come on now. Nobody? Not in all these years? The smooth looking craters you think caused by explosion. Not necessarily explosion. They can work the rock around the edges just like you see in the picture here. I mean, this is hella smooth. You look at these shapes, man, it's hella smooth. It looks man-made. It's perfect. It's circular. I mean, nature is pretty abstract. All I'm saying is they got tools that work this rock and grind away at this rock as well. That's what create these little ridges, this step-like sort of phenomena. So yeah, you can create a perfect crater-like shape the same way you can from a rock quarry. The more I look at rock quarries and the more I look at so-called impact craters, the more I can't tell them apart. And the fact that they say they both have mineral deposits, come on people, everybody know what happens at a rock quarry. We digging minerals. So just because they dig all of the minerals out of these old rock quarries, they say, hey guys, that's an impact crater. And we believe it when it's just an old empty rock quarry. And if you also, what you could do is get a map, see a map of the U.S. mining areas, heavy mining areas, and rock quarry areas. You can get a map and map this thing out, and also get a map to show you all of the meteorite impacts, and I bet you it line up. This is something I didn't do, but according to this, I bet you it line up. I bet you the maps of mining areas and rock quarry areas line up with the maps where they show where meteorite impact's supposed to happen. Somebody said the one big crater you showed is in Mexico. Maybe that's what killed the Mayans. See, that's a big deception. Nothing killed the Mayans, man. I hate when people say that, like the Mayans are still here. All of these people we speak of are still here. They just got different names today. Just like when the Mayans was here, none of this stuff was called America. So y'all got to keep that in mind. The Mayans ain't nothing but who we call Hispanics today. The Incans and the Aztecs, and then the Mayans. The Mayans were before the Incans and the Aztecs. But eventually it led to the Hispanics. What we call the Hispanics, or the Native Americans. We were all one rainbow colored people. Even what we call American blacks, okay? It was a different race of people. They didn't call themselves Indians. They didn't call themselves Mayan. So the Mayans never went nowhere. People say, where did the Kemetic people go? They didn't go nowhere. They still here calling themselves African Americans. People say, where did the Romans go? Man, listen, these people never went nowhere. These people still here with different names. The Romans are American today. Romans is a mixed society. We call it America today. It's Rome. Everything changed its name, and even the names of the land is changed. So these people never was destroyed by no impact craters. When nobody destroyed because a comet hit. If you believe that, you might as well believe that that's how they killed the dinosaurs. When you write lies in history and you make a mistake, you need a big eraser. So that eraser is the comets, the impact craters. We say, what happened to dinosaurs? Why we don't see no more dinosaurs today? And they say, well, a big meteorite came and killed them all. So the meteorite is their eraser. When they fucking up, when they can't explain the evolution timeline, they say a meteorite came. The reset button. If you think of the size of these impacts and you think of that they can annihilate all life on Earth, you got to laugh now. These impacts are the size of a couple of street blocks. And we saying that some struck the Earth, left that size of an impact and annihilated all of the life and reset life every time. It's ridiculous the more you think about it. That's an asteroid, okay? Again, it only exists in CGI. Show me an asteroid that ain't fake. Look at this one. It's fucking like quadruple the size of Earth. Anybody that believe in asteroids, you can't get mad at a grown man who believe in Santa Claus. It's all belief. Hey, I believe in Rudolph then. I believe Jack and the Beanstalk. It's all paintings, belief. This is the asteroid. All of this is the concept of doomsday. And I guarantee you right now, if I do the etymology of asteroid, we're going to see when the word came into existence. This is what you got to do, the etymology. See, look, the word come into existence during the same time they was creating these doomsday prophecies. During the same time of the other gentlemen I told you. You know both of these guys Masons. See, during the late 1700s, 1800s, they was getting busy creating these doomsday prophecies. That's why the original word meteor come about in the late 15th century. It didn't have no fear concept to it. It didn't have no concept that it'll hit the earth and kill you until the late 1700s, 1800s, like I've been showing you in the video. So even the word asteroid didn't come around to the late 1700s. You mean the ancestors didn't talk about this? Come on now, people. The ancestors didn't talk about these asteroids and meteorites. They had the same concept we have today of a meteor that streaks across the sky in a linear trajectory, even with the earth plane. They're not descending or ascending. They're in a straight path like an airplane. So I believe this is a very deep video here today because we're dealing with this from a timeline perspective as well. And I think I can pretty much rest my case here today.